Hey, Tony here. Today I'm going to go over all of the titles that I watched during the month of October, so stick around. So today I wanted to go over all of the titles that I watched during the month of October. You can follow along with me on my Letterboxd account. I was able to see a movie every single day, I do believe. Sometimes I saw more than one movie. And then there were a lot of horror movies that I've watched toward the end of the month. So we'll go over all of these. So like I said, I've got it linked down below if you would like to follow along with me on my Letterboxd account. Hopefully I will remember all of these titles. So we will see. So first up, I watched The Guest. This right here was a second time watch. It had been a while since I'd seen this one. And I remember it having a Halloween theme and wanted to check it out again. I've always heard great things about it. I remembered most of the film, but there were some big plot points that I didn't quite remember. So I watched this one. I really enjoyed it. I gave this one 3 stars and a heart. Okay, next up was another second time watch. I watched The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I had only seen this one time. I wanted to revisit this one. Great story. I really enjoyed what they did with this film. It was eerie enough. It had the atmosphere. Very great setting for a film. Great story. I gave this one 3 stars and a heart. Okay, next up I went to the theater and I watched a film called Joker Folie à Deux, which I guess is the Joker Part 2. I gave it 2 stars and a heart. Actually, I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. I liked it for what it was. It was not anything compared to the first Joker movie, which I loved. This one was very different and very unsatisfying, I guess you would say. But overall, I still, like I said, I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. I think I could revisit this one later on, maybe enjoyed it a little bit better. I was just really let down with this one and very disappointed. But I'll definitely check it out again. Okay, next up, I watched Unbroken. So here was a first time watch. I've had this in the collection for so long, I just never got around to watching it. I really enjoyed the story. It is based on true events. I gave that one 3.5 stars and a heart. Highly recommend you check it out if you've never seen it. Next up, I watched Guy Ritchie's The Covenant. This right here is a war film and is pretty much a single location type film. And I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3 stars and a heart. If you've never seen The Covenant, I would highly recommend you check it out. It's got a very interesting story, something very different. Okay, next up, I watched Deliver Us from Evil. This one I did not care for. I gave it 2 stars and a heart. Now, the reason why I gave it a heart is probably one that I will try to revisit later on down the road. There was a lot going on in this film, and I don't know, I think it had an interesting story. If I'm not mistaken, this right here may have been based on true events, and I would definitely want to check that one out again. But Deliver Us from Evil. Okay, next up, I watched Phantom of the Paradise. This right here was another first time watch. Did not care for it. I do like the slipcover, but overall, I did not like the story. I gave that one 1/2 star, no heart. I do not want to revisit it. I'm going to keep it in the collection for now, but that may be one that I get rid of eventually. Okay, next up, I watched Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. This right here was a first time watch. I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. I do enjoy Clint Eastwood films. This one, though, I think I was expecting a little bit more from. It wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't terrible. So, happy to have it in the collection. Okay, next up, I watched Salem's Lot. It had been a couple of years since I'd seen this one. I've always enjoyed Salem's Lot ever since I first saw it on TV during the miniseries. Really enjoyed it, but I wanted to revisit this one before I watched the newest Salem Slot. So Salem Slot, the original, I gave 3.5 stars and a heart. Definitely a great vampire movie. Very nostalgic for it. It is a little bit long, but well worth it. I would highly recommend it. And then the new Salem Slot, which I think may be on HBO, maybe on Max or Netflix. I can't remember which. But I actually really enjoyed it. I thought they did a really good telling of the story, and it's a little bit different than the original. Of course, it's not as long, which I enjoyed that aspect of it. So I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. I would definitely purchase that if they released it on physical media. Next up, I watched The Last Voyage of the Demeter. I gave this one 3 stars and a heart. This one I really enjoyed. It is a very interesting story. It's a vampire story, and very well told, if I can speak. But I enjoyed it. It was something different than your typical vampire story, and I highly recommend you check it out. From what I read on Letterboxd, either you loved it or hated it. I loved it. I gave it 3 stars and a heart. Next up, I watched Violation. This right here is a very strange movie. And I gave this one 2 stars and a heart. This right here was very strange. I don't know how to describe this, but it's a revenge movie. Very graphic. I was very surprised about how graphic it was. But if you've never seen it, maybe check it out. Check it out with caution. But it's one that I thought about after I watched it, and would definitely recommend. Okay, next up, I watched Ghost Game. Ghost Game was a streaming movie that I watched. I gave it a 1/2 star. I did not care for it. It was very dull and boring. I would not recommend it. I don't believe it's been released on physical media yet. It may just have a digital release, but I do not want to see it again. I can't really even tell you much about it, but it wasn't good. Next up, I saw Terrifier 3. I saw that one in the theater. I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. I enjoyed it for what it was. I definitely enjoyed it probably as much as the second one. I did like that it was a shorter film, and it went right along with the story. It had some really good blood and gore in it. I don't remember if it was actually better than the second as far as the blood and gore, but I did like the Christmas aspect of it, and so definitely looking forward to getting that one on physical media. After that, I watched Speak No Evil. Speak No Evil. I saw Speak No Evil in the theater also. I'm trying to remember where in the world did I see this at. I really loved it. I thought it was a great story, something different. It kept me glued to the screen. I wanted to see what was going to happen. I heard this is a remake, so I want to see the original, but I gave it 3.5 stars and a heart. Definitely looking forward to getting this one on physical media. Okay, next up, I watched The Twin. I gave The Twin 1.5 stars, no heart. And to be honest with you, at this moment, I do not remember this film. So I can't really tell you much about it. Looking at the back of it doesn't ring a bell either. So yeah, I can't tell you much about it. Look it up if you might be interested in watching it. I would not recommend it. Next up, I watched all of the Menendez brothers documentary on Netflix, I do believe. I gave it 3 stars and a heart. I remember when this story unfolded back when it happened, and I remember just being glued to the TV to figure out what it was that these boys had done, and so I thought the documentary was very well done. It also went along with me watching Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, which I also gave 3 stars and a heart. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Monster series for Dahmer, and I definitely enjoyed the Monster series for the Menendez story. I guess what I like about it is I do enjoy true crime, and so anytime there's a really good telling of a true crime story, I enjoy it, but I like the way that they kind of vamped it up. So if you like true crime, definitely check out Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. Okay, next up, I watched Anything for Jackson. This right here, I gave 2.5 stars and a heart. This right here was a very interesting story. It's a lot different than I thought it was going to be. I didn't realize what the story was. And to me, I thought they did a really good job with this. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. And there were some aspects of it that I really did enjoy. So Anything for Jackson would be worth your watch. Next up, I watched We Are Still Here. I gave this one 2.5 stars and a heart. This one, I don't remember very much about. You know, with me watching a movie every day and so many, sometimes it's hard to keep these straight. But with this film, I gave it 2.5 stars and a heart. So that means I want to revisit it eventually. But I don't remember exactly what's going on. I think it's a ghost story. So actually, I do remember parts of it now. Very strange story about this haunting in this house. I didn't care much for the whole story, but overall, I think I enjoyed it. Different things happened. I would have liked to have had it go in a different direction than it did, but it's still worth my watch. Next up, I watched Rust Creek. This right here was a first time watch. This one I gave 2 stars and a heart. It wasn't terrible. It has some really good aspects to it. It's pretty much a hostage type movie, kind of set out in the mountains as hillbillies, or I think they were cooking meth in a trailer. Some very different things were going on, but I would highly recommend you check this one out if you care for that kind of stuff. It wasn't excellent, but it wasn't terrible, and it would get my recommendation. Next up, I watched The Boy Behind the Door. This one I gave 2 stars and a heart. So a lot of these Shudder originals are either hit or miss with me. They're kind of mediocre sometimes. Sometimes they're really good. This right here was one of those that were just mediocre. It had these 2 boys in it. I thought they did a pretty good job. They did get a little bit on my nerves after a while. But this was more of another hostage type movie with a little bit of a twist, and the boy trying to rescue the other boy. So it was pretty interesting. So check that one out if you care to. Next up was a second time watch for me, and that was Rebecca. I wanted to see another eerie type of story. This one I really enjoyed. I gave it 3.5 stars and a heart. This is a Alfred Hitchcock film. I enjoy the special features afterward, but I think everybody should check this one out if you like a good story. So definitely think about that if you decide to pick it up or to watch it. Next up, I watched Caddo Lake. Oh yes, I remember this one now. Man, so I watched this on Max also, I do believe, and it is a very interesting story. I don't really want to say much about it other than definitely check it out. It's very interesting. Something very different. I'm trying to remember who it was that was the actor in this one. I can't remember his name, but this guy right here. I thought it was a really interesting story. And it's one of those that you would probably want to rewatch afterwards just to kind of see what's going on. But yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Okay, next up I watched A Haunting in Venice. I gave this one 2.5 stars and a heart. I do enjoy these films with this character in it. This one was probably my least favorite out of all the other ones that he did. Murder on the Orient Express, and I forgot what the other one was. But I wanted to complete the trilogy of films. This one was pretty interesting. It wasn't the best, but still worth a watch. Next up, I watched The Haunting. So this is another one that I wanted to check out. I had never seen before. I believe this is a 90s film, maybe early 2000s. but it is about these people going to this haunted house unknowingly, knowing that it was haunted. They're going there for a sleep study. The characters were a bit annoying, and the CGI effects were a little bit aggravating to watch, but I did give this one 2 stars and a heart. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. Now, next up, I watched Smile. I gave Smile 3 stars and a heart. This one was a second time watch. I do remember watching it the first time and being, okay with it. Some shock value to it. But this time around, I got to really focus on it a little bit more. I really enjoyed it more this time than the last time. So I do believe I bumped it up a half star. So this one gets 3 stars and a heart. Really enjoyed this one. And then after I watched Smile, I went and saw Smile 2. So Smile got 3 stars and a heart. Smile 2 got 2.5 stars and a heart. Smile 2 was okay in parts. I was a little bit let down of the ending, so I want to revisit it. But overall, I think it was a different story, kind of an interesting tale, but not the best. But it wasn't terrible. Okay, next up, I watched Sick. I gave Sick 2.5 stars and a heart. I thought this one right here was pretty good. It's based off of the time during the pandemic, and I thought it was a pretty interesting tale. I hate that it didn't get a Blu-ray release, but I think the DVD release is sufficient. If you've never seen Sick before, I think you should check it out. Okay, next up, I watched The Redeemer, Son of Satan. I gave this one 1.5 stars. I never want to see it again. It was dull. It was boring. It is an old slasher film. Not done very well at all. It was really pretty terrible. So don't care to see that one anymore. The next one I watched is You Are Not My Mother. I gave this one 2 stars and a heart. Overall, I thought it was a pretty interesting story about this mother who goes missing and then comes back. Not quite herself, but overall I thought it had some pretty good performances, so I think I'll keep that one in the collection. Next up, I watched The Exorcism with Russell Crowe. Did not like it at all. It got 0.5 star, no heart. Do not want to watch it again. I don't know what it is about this film. The story was all over the place. Did not make any sense. I don't know what this was about. I don't care to see it again. Speaking of bad, I watched Castle Freak. This right here is a RLJE release. I gave this one 0.5 star, no heart. The original, from what I understand, is a pretty good film. But when I saw Bone Tomahawk, I thought, okay, this might be good. But it was not. It had some good visual effects as far as the location, but I cannot stand the actors in this one. They were very poorly portrayed, very poorly acted. It had some graphic, well, I say graphic, yeah, I think to me graphic scenes in it, not of a horror kind, but of a sexual kind that I do not care for, and I do not want to see this one anymore. It's really nice looking slipcover, but I did not care for the film. Next up, I watched for the first time The People Under the Stairs. Really enjoyed this one. It felt a little bit dated. I did give it 2.5 stars and a heart. I thought for its time it was probably really good. It wasn't terrible for me. It's a little bit drug out, but overall I really did enjoy the story. I think this right here is a good film to have in the collection. If you've never seen it, definitely check it out. Next up was another first time watched. I watched Orphan. Never seen this one before. Really happy that I finally got to see it. I gave it 3 stars and a heart. Excellent film in my opinion. Everything about it I really did enjoy. So after I watched that, I went ahead and watched Orphan First Kill. Never seen this one before. I gave it 2 stars and a heart. It wasn't the best film. It's a prequel, but it really took me out of it by the way that this girl looked. You can tell she's much older now, and you can tell that they used a double to show the backside of the young girl walking and interacting with people. It wasn't the actress that plays the girl, but it had a nice little twist to it. It had some good scenes to it, but yeah, not very well executed. I think if they were going to do Orphan First Kill, they should have really done it earlier after the original and not have waited so long. Okay, getting toward the end, I watched The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Really had high hopes for this one just because of the way this guy looks on the cover. It is a mockumentary in some ways about this killer, and it was really boring, dull, dated, but I can see, you know, back in its day that it was probably a pretty good scary type film for people to watch, but I think we've seen so much more nowadays that this just didn't seem quite good. But I do love the way that the character looked, so that is pretty spooky enough. So after I watched that one, I went ahead and watched The Town That Dreaded Sundown from 2014, and this film is pretty much in reference to the original by going to the same area, visiting with the same people. They actually show the film of the original during this one, so it's really tied together, but done in a different sort of way. It wasn't the best. So The Town That Dreaded Sundown I gave 1.5 stars. The Town That Dreaded Sundown with this release I gave 2 stars. Neither one of them got hearts. I don't know that I want to visit them any longer. I may down the road, but not right now. But I did like what they did with this one, just because you pretty much get the original story within this one. So if you're going to watch any of them, maybe just watch this one. I think having the original is a good reference, though. Okay, next up, I watched Witches in the Woods. This right here is another, what is this one? This is a Shout Factory release. This movie was pretty bad. I gave it 1.5 stars, no heart. It's about a group of teenagers who are going out on a road trip, and just a tragic situation where they get stranded, and it's just a terrible story. I didn't like it. Characters were introduced that really never got fleshed out. One in particular. So I don't really know where they were going with that. But very disappointing movie. I do not recommend it. And then on October 30th and 31st, I watched Halloween and Halloween 2. I do enjoy watching Halloween on Halloween. But this year I thought I was going to just go ahead and watch it a day early, because I haven't seen Halloween 2 in a while, and I wanted to revisit that one. So I watched Halloween and Halloween 2. I can't say enough good things about both of those. If you've never seen Halloween and Halloween 2, I don't know where you've been, but to me I would recommend them being watched back to back, because they go quite well together. But very happy that I was able to watch both of those again. So those are all of the films that I watched during the month of October. It was a mixed bag. I watched a lot of bad films this month, which makes me think that I'm going to start purging some of these titles from my collection. I am out of space, and I really don't want to revisit some of these films, so there's no reason for me to hold on to them. So I may start a segment where I talk about that. But overall, I'm really happy with what I watched. Hopefully you were able to watch a lot of films during the month of October. Please leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about the titles that I watched. And also give me some recommendations of titles that you think I should check out during November, because I really do appreciate your recommendations. But thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and we will see you next time.